The Starling Lab was an early entrant into the PL ecosystem because we got really excited, in fact, about IPFS. And I'm so excited to tell you a little bit about our work here, primarily because so many people here are new. So let me start with just a journey of how we got to this point. So the Starling Lab is based at Stanford and USC, and it is dedicated to creating research opportunities for historians, lawyers, and journalists to figure out how Web3 can affect their work. And we want to bring those stakeholders to the table with the technologists so that we can ensure that this type of technology meets their needs. We began with a project of taking the USC Shoah Foundation's Visual History Archive and finding a way to get it onto the decentralized web. How did we do that? Well, we started with IPFS. And for those of you who don't know, the Visual History Archive is an archive that's over 4 petabytes worth of information. It has the video testimony of the survivors of genocide from over 10 different conflicts. So we took that information and we realized that, in fact, decentralized storage is the very best way to store this type of data. And those insights then led us to think more about how journalists could get involved. And we started the chain of custody now, not just at the storage level, but actually in cameras themselves, so that we can start hashing and signing the pixels that come from photographers, as well as the metadata, and ensuring that that payload made its way safely from the field all the way to the newsroom. We did this with Reuters as part of their coverage of the 2020 election. And for the 78 days between the election and the inauguration, we worked to take photos from the Reuters newswire and actually get it onto the decentralized web, again, with CIDs and IPFS. We continue that work internationally in Hong Kong, looking at their most recent elections, ensuring that we can, again, ensure the photographers have the type of tools that they need to protect their work, especially in that environment in Hong Kong. And then finally, we realized that the work we were doing was incredibly relevant for chain of custody of information that is critical for war crimes documentation. We began that effort with Hala Systems, that's based here in Lisbon, and we deployed the technology in northwest Syria and brought a series of international lawyers to the table to figure out actually how international legal principles could be directly applied to the use of the technology. And so, sadly, it was that work that prepared us for the recent conflict in Ukraine. When the conflict broke out, we immediately jumped to action and figured out how we could deploy this information to take web archives from Ukraine and start to preserve them for the long haul. This work, I like to make an analogy around it that it's similar to taking a Telegram post and putting it into an evidence bag. Why? Because we need all of this type of information in order for it to have the best chance for it to be admissible and used for long-term accountability. War crimes, when they will be prosecuted against Russia, it will likely be decades from now in which that adjudication will happen. So this type of storage that we're talking about here, it's very high stakes and it needs to last for a long time. So to give you an example, here is a Telegram post that was taken as the first documentation against an attack on School 17, which is in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. So there it is, now downloaded using Web Recorder. Philly is here, big shout out to him. An amazing developer in the IPFS ecosystem. And what we did is we took the CID and we registered that on multiple L1s so that we had a way of preserving the integrity of that image. We then put it on to, using the CID, we then had choice. So we could put it in a public setting if that was appropriate, or we could put it on private IPFS clusters, or then move it over to Filecoin. So you can see here really the power of this type of content addressing. And that, I can very proudly tell you, in June of this year, we submitted the first cryptographic dossier to the International Criminal Court that took evidence from 2 weeks worth of attacks in Kharkiv in March. And we are continuing to do this work. We're preparing other submissions that we hope to get done by the end of the year. So this is groundbreaking work. This is the first cryptographic dossier that was submitted to any court in the world. And we did it with your help. Thank you very much. We're really excited to be part of the ecosystem. And please reach out because we're here to work with you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been great working with their team as well in the past year. So hi, everyone. I'm Phoebe. I'm the co-founder of Litecoin and Likeland. So me and my team has been building a decentralized publishing infrastructure and tools for independent media to use in the past few years. The social context and political landscape in Hong Kong escalate to put our product into test in the past year. That's where I came from. And a lot of pro-democrat media got shut down. Historical record of a 30 years newspaper got wiped out in one night. That's the picture where all our citizens go rush to get the last issue of that paper last year. So hence we have been spending our effort to content preservation, ensure content integrity, and most importantly, bridging media to utilize the IPFS network and experiment new business model in Web3. And we first started to educate a lot of our layman users, especially those who are in the media landscape, to the idea of not your key, not your content, where we believe it will be the future of how content should be published and stored. And the first thing that we built is to provide a piece of metadata registry layer towards their publishing work before it is stored on IPFS, called the ISCN. We actually borrowed the idea of ISBN in the library system to make sure there is a process of metadata to be added on when things are published to the internet. That also includes their storage location in IPFS. That is easier to retrieve their content from the network and include all other important metadata such as licensing and stakeholders information, etc. And the second thing that we deliver to the community is to integrate IPFS with the WordPress plugin. For example, this is a media site that we work with, and they are built on WordPress to start to publish through WordPress and the IPFS network. Essentially, we wanted to help media to unlock powerful feature bought by IPFS, where media can own their content, create self-archive for themselves, and have full control over their site so that they can utilize their traffic, where they can also explore and keep their existing business model like advertising or subscription based. So I would describe our current community as the EU of civic media, where our team as a mediator and infrastructure provider together all these content lovers together and build a better publishing future. And very much looking forward to connect with the rest of IPFS community today. Thank you.
So hey, my name is Xavi. I'm researching at Interplanetary Mind Map how to model information on how we think. But what I want to share today is my experience in the censorship in Catalonia. Some of you may know, on October 1st, there was like this 2017. There was this massive censorship when the Catalan citizens tried to vote to separate from Spain, and the Spanish state used all the force they had, basically violence and censorship, to prevent that from happening. IPFS had a pretty significant role by there because the site where the people had to check their data for how and when to vote was a static site and was mirrored on IPFS. It was hosted on IPFS. So for several days, while the ISPs and the state were shutting down sites after sites, people was just like spinning up new nodes and mirroring the site. Actually, for several days, the gateway.ipfs.io was completely inaccessible in Spain. So that left us a pretty strong imprint to most of the Catalan citizens. And some of us decided that we had to do something about it. So we started working on a decentralized voting system on ZK Snarks and IPFS. But we were so afraid because there was people in prison just for organizing a referendum, and there were people tagged as terrorists just for doing minor stuff. So we're completely paranoid and completely fear about it. And we couldn't expose ourselves. We had to work on this protocol just in complete darkness. We couldn't find financing, we couldn't build a community, we couldn't hire. And after 2 years, when we felt that the project was actually, like the tension had faded away and we could make the project public, we were quite tired and quite hurt for all the process. If that was not enough, just at the beginning of this year, Citizen Lab, Canadian organization, released the forensic work they've been doing, where the Spanish states basically used the NSO group spyware, Pegasus and Candiru, to spy over Catalan citizens, including the president, activists, politicians, developers. And with them, my co-founder and I was at least targeted 5 different occasions with this software. And also during that year, it was known through several filtrations that we are actually under permanent investigation by the Spanish intelligence for what we're doing, which is building a decentralized voting protocol for democracy. And the judge having request that from Estonia, like all our financial details or like transactions or company was based in Estonia, and it actually have request to Google all our data. That's only the stuff that we know that has been filtered. So who knows how else have they done? On top of that, there's been plenty of news defamation and conspiracy theories that we need to deal on a daily basis. So I just want to leave you with that the enemy of decentralization is pretty powerful, and violence, fear, money, control go a long way. Thanks.
Thank you all for your work and for sharing your story. I just have two questions for you all. The first is, what are the aspects of IPFS and related technologies, either present today or that need to exist in the future, that are most important to your work?
So for us, it's choice, right? Because content addressing doesn't just apply towards public dissemination of information, but it's also the ability to synchronize between private parties that can establish their own infrastructure. So it's a critical component to allowing human rights activists to make the choices to where they put their data and how they can protect it.
Yeah, echoing that, but also I think encryption, at least on the day of the referendum, was a pretty big thing, and many different hacks had to go around in order to protect people's data, and at the same time this data was accessible through IPFS. So any constructions that help make accessible these technologies, and especially like the privacy side, to the citizens in extreme situations, that's all welcome.
Yeah, and I think in our case, the built-in content integrity check is and allowing for decentralization of storage is very helpful towards independent media, especially those who don't really have a lot of resources and they don't really have technical team on their team to use it, which happened to be a lot of our target audience came from that background. And especially when media got shut down, a lot of individual journalists actually go on reporting themselves. So how we can provide access to them to IPFS is actually very helpful.
And I think we see as a community the impact of investing in an area of work and building relationships and projects and software and programs over time. What I'd like to ask from you as our final question is, what can this community do to support what you do?
So the standardization of retrieval is something that is really important, and IPFS is getting more and more performant, but the handover between, on retrieval between IPFS and Filecoin, those are things that we'd actually really love to see because each of them serve right now a very different purpose. And similarly, the ability to retrieve from mobile devices is something that's really critical because for us, the holy grail of all this is for a simple mobile phone to be the node, the powerful node that can store all of our information. So retrieval standardization across all those is critical.
I think similar to us as well. We've been looking for a more stable retrieval of content. Got to know that referee storage is a good solution for us now. And another side of thing is being a frontier, working with these all layman users, we actually need a lot of great storyteller like Jonathan to educate them why it is important to be storing something that is not in their current workflow, how we can actually integrate better. So I think educations it is very important as well. And lastly, I think having event like this and to be able to connect with other projects in the IPFS network is very helpful towards making a bigger impact. Not just where we came from, but connected globally. It's very helpful. So thanks for having me today as well. Hopefully next time in Asia.
I will echo that too, but I think the censorship events and these oppressions will keep happening. It has happened in Hong Kong, it has happened in Catalonia, it's happening in Iran. So those are really high-end, sophisticated censorship. And sometimes it's usually like in a very specific, critical moment in time. So I wonder how can we as a community coordinate to support these communities that just very specific moments need infrastructure, nodes, or anything that can support this specific fight that they're doing.
Thank you all very, very much. Please find our speakers here throughout the conference and connect with them, get to know their stories. I think there's a lot we can do when we collaborate together. So thank you. And now over to Dietrich to welcome our IPFS Applications Showcase.